story this week was written by myself. It's called Without a Head at Halloween. White smoke poured out of the tiny white chimney as the wind buttered hard against the little white cottage in the depths of Hollow Grove. Within the whitewashed stone walls of the cottage sat Nancy and her husband, Clancy O'Shaughnessy, around a red-hot turf fire. It was a bitter night, and October was almost leaving. In fact, as it would tell, sure 'twas the eve of the Hallow, or better known as Halloween. Clancy was a desperate man for a swallow of drink, and there was nothing there to keep him as he sat twiddling his two thumbs for the want of wetting his whistle before the local pub in Hollow Grove shut its doors. "What's the matter with you, Clancy? You haven't stopped fidgeting and fumbling for the past hour and a half," said Nancy. Clancy replied, "Nothing's the matter with me. I'm just thinking about the widow down by Hollow Glen now. Sure, isn't it a terrible thing that she has to be alone on such a cold old night? And it's a man without a heart that couldn't even drop in to say hello. And is there anything that's needed doing around the old house? So, Nancy, now here I am thinking maybe I should just call in on her, like, to see if she's all right, like." "That's nice," said Nancy, and she kept on knitting away furiously. She might need a bag of turf or a few extra spuds. And wouldn't it be a shame now if we couldn't lend her a helping hand?" Clancy said. Nancy stopped and put down her knitting. She stood up and pulled her purse from the pantry shelf and opened it. And she took out a handful of coins and said, "Here, Clancy, now, hand her a few shillings." And she put her hand into his overcoat. "Oh, and here's a shilling for yourself when you're down, or get yourself a drink. And pick up a pound of butter and 3 eggs. And stay out of the pub now. They'll be coming home like at all hours of the night. Clancy, now, 1 drink, I said. Mind you, now, off you go, and don't be all night." Clancy was up like a shot, had his cap on his head, threw his overcoat on, and tore off like a greyhound towards Hollow Glen. The twilight was fading fast as Clancy passed the widow's cottage without so much as a glance or a hello or by your leave, and all Clancy could think of was getting a belly full of brew inside Mulholland's. Three hours later, Clancy stumbled out the front door of the pub and staggered along the grove, singing and swaying, when suddenly a harsh voice beckoned him from behind. "Clancy, what have you done with me head?" said the voice. Clancy spun around, and there before him stood his old drinking companion, Bopper Thompson, who'd been dead for nearly 10 years. "Away with you, Bopper! Don't be hurting me! You're dead! As dead as you'll ever be!" said Clancy. "Clancy, where's me head? Look what I've got instead!" said Bopper as he placed a pumpkin where his head should have been. Clancy started to run, falling every 3 strides with Bopper coming after him. Clancy was screaming in fright, and Bopper kept on saying over and over, "Where's me head, Clancy? Where's me head? Give me back me head, Clancy!" "Look, I haven't got your head!" Clancy screamed, and like an echo his voice rang out through Hollow Grove. But there was no one there to hear but Clancy and Bopper. But now Bopper had disappeared. Clancy could walk no further, and fell to the ground near the widow's cottage. just before he dropped off to sleep, the sound of frisky horses' hooves startled him from the black shades of his slumber. Sitting up upon a horse was a young girl, slenderly built, it seemed, underneath her dark cloak. A hood covered her face, and Clancy could hardly make out any of her features. The horse stood still at Clancy's feet, as Clancy shivered in the night wind, thinking about her bad and ear bashing he'd get when he got home to Nancy for staying out all night. After a few moments, Clancy had an idea. He looked up at the young lady on the horse and said, "If you're going a little further down Hallowgrove Glen, I'd be very much in your compassionate arms if you could give me a ride away, as my poor widowed aunt is near death with a bad cough, and I'm already walked 10 miles, sure, and my heart is nearly ready for giving up. But, oh, sure, I'd be very much grateful if you could let me sit behind you there on the horse." The lady never spoke a word. She just pointed her finger and summoned Clancy to mount up upon the horse, which he did. And the horse galloped wildly through the glen and straight past his very own cottage, and on the horse went, with Clancy shouting, "Stop! Stop! You've missed my house! You've gone too far! Stop!" The horse pulled up beside a gallows tree, and a noose swung and hung from the sturdy branch, and the lady pointed her finger to the noose and then to Clancy's head. She took off her hood and revealed the skull without any form at all, and 2 deep, hollow black holes stared back at him. And Clancy stood there, shaking and sweating at the sight of the ghostly rider, and the horse reared up, throwing Clancy to the ground, and the lady on the horse began to wail like a cat from hell as Clancy threw stone after stone at her. "Leave me be! Leave me be!" Clancy screamed, and the lady continued to point her finger at the noose hanging from the branch of the gallows tree. A harsh voice rang out beside Clancy. "Don't let her have your head! Don't let her have your head!" The voice was that of Bopper Thompson. Clancy shouted, "Bopper, help me, Bopper, Bopper! Tell her to leave me alone!" "It's too late, Clancy. The lady has put the finger on you." A crowd of headless men began to gather round the tree. Some of them wore heavy chains upon their feet, and Clancy looked, and he recognised half a dozen of their faces from Mulholland's pub. The moon shone down, and sons of the departed years arose from their graves to join the party at the gallows tree. Now and then some of the men spoke aloud, saying, "So it's to the poor widow's house you were going to go, Chance?" Ha! While the remainder laughed. "And what about the butter and the eggs for that good wife of yours, Shaughnessy? Shame on you! Where will you find them when you've no head on your shoulders?" The crowd all tutted in disgrace. "Give me a chance," said Clancy. "Just one more chance." "You've had one more chance than you've had enough chances already, Clancy, to make it up before now." "Then if it's me head you're after, give me one last wish now. You can't deny me that, sure," said Clancy, and the lady lowered her finger and nodded her head in agreement. "Let me just have one last swig of me bottle of whiskey, me little flask I have here in me overcoat pocket, and just to make the pain a little easier to take." As he reached for the bottle, sometimes life can take a turn for the better, and as Clancy pulled out the bottle of holy water his wife had just put there for the widow in Hallowgrove Glen, "Be Jesus!" said Clancy. Without hesitation, he threw the holy water at the lady, whose horse ran off, and threw the lady off down the cliff. And the horse fell down with her, and the rest of the crowd followed, holding their heads in their hands. One by one, each of the ghouls threw themselves over the cliff face. Dawn arrived as Clancy opened his eyes near the widow's cottage. "Could it have been a bad dream?" he said to himself. He made his way back to his cottage and prepared himself for the mouth-washing that he was going to get from Nancy. "Where in the name of God have you been all night, Clancy?" said Nancy. "Well, on the way back from town, I must have fallen down or something. I never woke up. till just about dawn, Nancy, and I found myself there by the willow tree in Hollow Glen, near the widow's cottage. Did you give the widow the few shillings now, and the bottle of holy water I put in your overcoat pocket last night? Nancy said. Clancy put his hand in the pocket. The bottle of holy water was gone. Clancy swallowed a deep gasp and gulped. Yes, he said. The end.